Well, hello once again, and welcome to Creative Real Estate Investing. In Module 3, we're going to talk about options, and in particular, we're going to focus on sandwich lease options and purchase lease options. And not so much teaching you how to do them as to but just to show you how they work and how you can apply them in a more creative way. So we'll talk about the lease options with the rent to own. Again, the sandwich lease options, which require no money. If you don't have a job or credit or poor income, these are all ways that you can participate in lease options, and that's through the sandwich lease options. The purchase lease options actually do require a job, good credit, as well as money for your down payment. Unless you actually do this through joint venture partnerships or use of other people's money, which we touch on here as well. All right, so let's get started. So here you are about to do a sandwich lease option. The first thing you do is you identify a rental property of interest to you. You realize that the market rent is $1,200 per month. The current market value for this house is $250,000. And the owner is willing to sell in the future. So what you do is you enter into a 3-year lease agreement at a discounted rent of $1,000, or as much as you can, $1,000 for this example, and you agree to do all of the repairs up to a $500 value per occasion. So for example, if something is damaged in the house at a cost and you need to call the plumber in, it costs $400, then you will pay for that on behalf of the owner of the property. So this makes it a complete hands-off opportunity for the owner and alleviating them of their headaches. So the ideal person you're looking for is somebody who is very frustrated with high turnover. They're not really a good landlord, so they're more apt to work with you in this particular model. You also create an option to purchase the property at 3 years, 2 or 3 years into the future at today's current market value. And then to make everything legal, you have to pay them a small option fee. And when I say legal, to make the contract legal, it can be as little as $1. However, in a case like this, you would usually pay them a small amount, $100 or $200. So now you've found the property, and now you need to find a good family that's willing to live in this property and want to buy it in the future as well. So you find this family, and they enter into a 3-year lease, paying $1,400 a month with $200 a month credit. They're paying above market rent, so that you're creating a spread then between what you're collecting and what you are actually having to pay. They agree to buy the property from you 3 years in the future at the future market value, which you anticipate to be approximately $290,000 in this example. You also want to collect a large option fee from this family to ensure that they will move forward and stay in the property and close on this transaction in the future. So you're looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of a 5% down payment. And they also agree, because these are now homeowners and in a rental position, they're going to have to be responsible for all maintenance and repairs at some point in time in the future. So for the time that they lease the property from you, they agree to do all of the repairs up to a value of $1,000 per occasion. All right, so in just a very quick review here, you agree to do the repairs up to $500 per occasion. Therefore, it's hands off for the owner. You've entered into a 3-year lease for $1,000 a month with an option to purchase it for $250,000, and you've paid out a small option fee of $100. You then find the family. You've got a 3-year lease for $1,400 a month, and you're going to give them $200 a month back if and when they buy that property in the future. You're then going to sell it to them at a future price of $290,000, and you want to collect a large option fee. I said 5% is a good target, but minimum of $5,000. And then the tenant agrees to do all of the repairs up to $1,000 per occasion. So what that means with the tenant doing repairs up to $1,000, if there is a a need to do a repair for, say, $800. What you are going to do is you're going to be responsible for the first $500, so you're going to submit the bill then to the owner of the property, who's going to pay you the difference, which is $300. But at the same time, the tenant's actually going to do all the work for you and pay for a full $800. So you just made an additional $300 profit from the owner of that property. So this is just a little a way of generating a little bit of extra cash, which we are not going to figure into the profits of the deal, but it's just something to be aware of. So you've collected rents of $1,400 and you're paying out at $1,000 for 3 years. So that difference of $400 a month times 36 months is $14,400. You've also collected an option fee of $5,000 from the tenant, and the future price of $290,000 less the price that you've agreed to pay is $250,000. Therefore, that's another $40,000. So you've collected $59,000. However, you've also agreed to pay back to the tenant $200 a month, so that's a credit, as well as credit them the option fee they've already paid at the beginning of the transaction. So that means your profit in this particular deal would be $46,800. Now the steps to do a sandwich lease, high level again, just find that suitable rental property with an owner willing to sell. You enter into a 3-year lease. It can be 2 years, 3 years. Negotiate a future price as well that is acceptable to yourself. Complete the lease contract and an option to purchase contract. You may also want to enter into a third contract, which is an actual purchase and sale contract with the same dates for the option, but the owner already signs it and you have an out written into that, so that's subject to a final inspection or subject to you still wanting to buy the property. That way, if you have a difficult time finding the owner of the property when it comes time to buy that property, you already have the purchase and sale contract in place. You also want to pay a small option fee, and again, this option fee that you're paying out is going to be as small as possible. You also then find a tenant buyer willing to buy this specific property in the future at an agreed upon price, and you collect a non-refundable option fee. So if they go ahead and they buy the property at the end of the term, they get a credit for that option fee. If they fail to fulfill their obligations, they lose that option fee and you get to keep it. You want to create an option contract setting the price and terms that you've agreed upon as well. Create a legal conforming lease separate from the option contract, so you never combine the two contracts, and this lease will need to be in compliance with whatever jurisdiction you happen to be operating in with respect to this particular property. Then you just simply sit back and you collect the money on this, and you're just collecting on the spread between the owner of the property and the future purchaser of that property as well. Now, I want to just highlight here that this is definitely a very high-level description of how a sandwich lease option works. I'm just sharing this information with you so you understand the concept of it. If you want to get into learning how to do sandwich lease options, and I highly recommend that you work with an educator who is doing these types of transactions on a regular basis. A special caution: if you're doing this in the U.S. market, then since 2010 the rules have changed dramatically in the U.S. market, and they have a new act down there called the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, which deals with how you the transaction of money and interest charged, etc., and has a direct impact on how you structure or work with your rent-to-own transactions. So you need to be aware of this particular new Reform Act as well. Now, if you're going to do this, how do you find suitable properties? Well, you're going to scan newspapers, the internet, looking for homes for rent. And if you find something that looks of interest to you, you'll determine if it sounds like a suitable property, based upon the size, location, price, the features, etc. All the information they provide in the article. You then call directly on the ad, and you're going to act as if you are a potential tenant, and you're going to continue to ask more questions to confirm that this actually is a suitable property for you. If it sounds like a suitable property, it's a good match for you, then you want to ask if they would ever consider selling in the future. Now, if they come back with a straight out no, then there's no point doing anything else with this particular property. You just move on to the next one. However, what you're looking for is somebody who is willing to sell in the future, and if they say yes, you then make an appointment for a viewing to go look at the property. At that point in time, what you do, if it's a suitable property for you, you then offer up a 3-year lease, and you stress that there's no vacancies. You'll even do all of the maintenance work for the property at a cost of up to $500 per time for yourself. So you're taking all of the stress and headaches away from the management and ownership of this particular property. Now, if you're doing all of this, then what you want to do is negotiate your discounts based upon the above benefits. So that's how you justify offering $1,000 per month versus a $1,200. That's what the market rent is. You point out to them that just having one vacancy for a couple months is going to more than make up the difference if you offer them a 3-year lease and they're guaranteed no vacancies. Then you offer to purchase based upon today's price, and this is where a lot of people have a little bit of a challenge trying to justify this. But what you have to do is that, you have to explain to them that if I pay you the full price on the future, then there's no value in it for you. Plus, if you were to wait until the future to sell that property, you're going to lose 3 to 5% because very rarely do people pay full price for a property in the first place. You'll also save on the real estate fees, so there's another 4 or 5% as well. Plus, over the course of the next 3 years, you continue to enjoy the principal pay down, that you're able to reduce the debt, the tenants that you are paying down their mortgage, so increasing their equity over time as well. So if the owner of the property does the math, they will probably end up with the same, if not a little bit more, today at today's price than if they were to wait 3 years and sell it in the future. All right, so then how do you actually find the tenants? Well, you can start to place ads, and you've seen the ads where it says why buy when you can rent, or when you can own rather. No, it should be why rent when you can own. And you take a look on the internet, Kijiji, Craigslist, etc. You take a look in all of the the newspapers. You can place ads in the newspapers, the free newspapers that are relatively inexpensive to advertise in. Create a website, post notices at places that renters are known to frequent, laundromats, grocery stores, public transit, etc., with the little pull tabs on them as well. You can also have paid advertising if you have a house under contract, which means that if you find a really good place, a really good deal, you put it under contract for a 3-year lease, but everything you do is going to be subject to you being able to find a tenant suitable for that property. In the meantime, the landlord, the owner of the property, continues to market it for rent, so now the race is on to see whether you can get a tenant before the owner of the property finds a new tenant. So this is when you may want to invest a little bit more money and into the advertising and pay some extra dollars to try and attract a good qualified tenant buyer for this house that you have under contract. Now, there's pros and cons of doing the sandwich lease option. So the pros are that it's relatively low risk for you because you have no ownership stake in the transaction. Everything is done with options. You can actually do this without having any sort of credit, any cash, or even a job, because you don't have to qualify for anything. You're just the go-between. You're the person in between the owner of the property and the tenant buyer of that property. It can be very lucrative, even if the deal fails to close, and that is a risk that the deal doesn't close. In that particular case, as I mentioned, you get to keep the non-refundable deposit, plus that spread in the example that we said earlier where you're paying out $1,000 but you're collecting $1,400 every month. That $400 is your profit. So that's $4,800 a year that you're collecting on a property that you don't even own. It can be win-win for all parties. It can relieve the owner of the property of the headaches and hassles of that he's experiencing with that property, and it can also create an opportunity for your tenant buyer to get into a house much sooner than they normally would have been able to in the past. Now, the cons of doing it can be very difficult to match tenants and houses. So you're constantly looking for houses and you're constantly looking for tenants at the same time, and hopefully being able to match up a house with a tenant that wants that particular house. There's a small percentage of qualified tenants out there to work, and you also have a high percentage of delinquency, meaning that probably 20 to 30% of the deals, sandwich leases that you put together will actually come to fruition and close in the future. But as I say, the positive thing about that, just the same, is that you still have positive cash flow all the way through. Plus, if your tenant fails to qualify or to close on the deal at the end of the term of 3 years, you may have somebody else that would be interested in that property, or perhaps that property has gone up so much in value that you'd be crazy to walk away from the deal. You still have the opportunity to buy that house if it's a good deal. All right, so now let's take a look at the purchase lease options, or what we call tenant first. And in this particular case, what you're doing is you're attracting potential tenant buyers before you find the properties. So you attract lots of leads through your marketing, and you screen them out to determine whether they are a good fit for the program, whether they've got the down payment, whether they can qualify in the future. You then help them determine what they can afford. So you don't let them buy something or get involved in something that they cannot afford to purchase 3 years in the future. You then have them look for, on the MLS, their top 3 homes that are of interest to them, given the criteria that you provide them. Tell them that they can only afford to buy a house if it's listed no more than $275,000. Therefore, go looking on the MLS and see what you can find. You also want to collect their non-refundable deposit. And what you do is you collect their deposit and you hold it, and on the condition that if you find them a home, then it becomes their non-refundable deposit. If you're unable to find a home that's suitable to both parties, then you give 100% of the money back to them. You want to get the money at this point in time because you don't want to waste all of your time and energy only to discover that they said they had the money, but in reality they don't have near enough. Then what you do is, once they've selected a few houses, you have your real estate agent show them the houses on your behalf, and make sure that your real estate agent understands that it's you buying the house for these individuals. So your realtor needs to be very careful in what they say and how they share information with the tenants. They need to understand that you are the client, not the tenants. Once you have mutually agreed upon one house, the tenants love this house, you're happy with the condition of the house based upon your realtor's feedback, etc., then you make an offer and you go through the whole due diligence process of making sure that it is a good house. While you're doing your diligence on the property, you're going to complete all the paperwork with your tenant buyer, and that means that you're going to complete a lease as well as the option contract, which are 2 very separate contracts. You never combine the 2 of them because depending on the jurisdiction, but in most jurisdictions you have to be careful what you put inside a lease, because a lot of the jurisdictions will have rules and regulations on how you interact or treat your tenants. With the option contract, if there's something within the option contract that you want to enforce in the lease, you can't necessarily put it in the lease, but you can put it in the option contract. So you need to have the 2 contracts very separate. Once everything looks good, you've got the contracts sorted out and the property looks to be good, you remove the conditions. You then close the deal and the tenant buyer moves in, and shortly after you have ownership of that property, you can then place a second mortgage on the property as well. And you can use other people's money, like their cash, their lines of credit. I like to use the retirement funds, and so in Canada that would be the RSPs. In the United States that's going to be the 401s, and you can approach people who are experiencing extremely low returns, and you can offer them a 6, 7, 8% return on a second mortgage. The size of this mortgage will be equal to the size of your initial down payment, which means you now get your money back out of that transaction and allows you then to repeat the whole process with another property. So let's take a look at how the cash flow or the profit works here. So if we have a list price of $300,000 and you're able to purchase it for $285,000, which is quite realistic, your principal and interest at 3% is going to be a mortgage payment of just over $1,000. Your taxes, let's say $3,000 a year or $250 a month. You'll have insurance, $100 a month. So your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance cost total is $1,429 per month. Your second mortgage at 8% interest only is going to work out to $13,680 per year. Now the tenant buyer is paying you a future price based on a 5% appreciation, and this is whatever you can work out and feel comfortable with, but 5% is a pretty decent appreciation in average. So they're going to pay you $345,000 based upon the current market value. The non-refundable option fee is going to be $15,000, which you get to keep because it is an option fee that you get to keep if they fail to fulfill the option contract, or you apply it as a credit if they purchase it in the end. The market rent is going to be credited back. You're going to charge market rent plus an additional $200 per month. So that's going to be a credit that they're going to be paying, collecting at the end rather. So over a period of 3 years, you've collected the option fee, you've collected monthly rent less your PITI, so you're charging $1,800 a month, but you've got your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance that you have to pay out every month. Times 36 is $13,356. Then the profit from the sale, if you're selling it for $345,000, the balance owing on their mortgage is $209,000, so that's $136,000. So you're going to collect at the end of this 3-year term $164,356. However, you need to return to the buyer, the tenant buyer, their option fee, that credit, plus you agreed to credit them $200 per month, which is $7,200. You have to pay your investor back their $57,000, which was their second mortgage, plus the interest that you were paying them as well. So you have to return $92,880. Therefore, your total profit in this transaction is just over $71,000. Now, the return on your investment, because you were able to do 100% financing of this with that second mortgage, you actually have no money in this transaction at all. So your return is actually an infinite return. Now, I have included a purchase lease option worksheet that you can use to help you calculate what the profit is, the cash flow is going to be in a particular deal. So all you have to do, where you see the bright blue numbers there, is you enter in the information. So you'll see that it's a 36-month lease at the very top center. And if it was a 2-year lease, that number would be 24. You would enter the list price, the purchase price, the deposit paid, monthly rents collected, and the owner payments out, etc. So this will do the whole calculation for you. Now, here's how you can actually make use of a purchase lease option. This is a property that I purchased. The address there is Ogden Avenue. It's a 3-bedroom side-by-side. Certainly not a pretty building, but I didn't buy it because it was pretty. I bought it because of its cash flow. So the purchase price, actually inside is quite nice. It's just the outside is not very attractive at all. The purchase price was $95,000. That's for both sides. The repairs, $15,000 is what I had to spend in order to get it up to, it was owner occupied, so the one side was rented out for a long-term tenant and had already been renovated with new windows and it was in excellent condition. The owner side was in rough condition and required more repairs, so that was the $15,000. I determined that the after repair value was going to be $130,000. So what I did was I bought it for cash and I did the repairs, and once the repairs were completed, I then went to the bank for financing based on 80% of the after repair value, which meant that I had a $104,000 mortgage on the property. So in the end, my cash invested in this particular transaction was just $6,000. So let's take a look at the cash flow. So on the conventional buy and hold, which was my initial plan anyhow, the renovated side, which was the previously owner-occupied side, was going to be $750. The other side was only $550 because the tenant had been there for so many years and the rents were quite low, and the market that we are located in, we have rent control, so we can't just bump the rents up. So the total revenue collected, $13,000 a month or $15,600 per year, but we have expenses such as our mortgage, our taxes, insurance, maintenance, the water and sewer, for a grand total of $1,100 per month or $13,200. So our profit is $2,400 per year. Now that's a pretty good profit considering that I only spent $6,000. So my return on investment is 40%. So that's not really a bad deal, but it really bothered me that I was only able to charge $550 for the one side instead of full market rent. So the opportunity was presented to myself to do a lease option. And what we did was we can't change the rents in number 7, but we can increase the rents on number 5 because we did a purchase lease option with a new tenant. They paid $200 a month above market rent, which they were going to get back in the form of a credit. Number 7 side was still the same. So our new revenue went up from $15,600 up to $18,000. We've got all of the same expenses. They remain the same. So our total expenses is still $13,200, but our profit now is $4,800. So our return on investment has jumped up from 40% to 80%. I also collected a deposit of $2,000. Now, if I apply that $2,000 to the initial cash I invested, I had $6,000 in the transaction. Now I'm down to $4,000. That means my return on investment is actually 120%. So you can see how I've improved my, it depends how you look at it. I've doubled my revenues, doubled my return on investment, and or tripled my return on investment because of the deposit I received as well. Plus, there's going to be a capital gain of approximately $40,000 in the future when the property is sold. So if the property is sold in 3 years, I make $40,000. If it doesn't sell in 3 years, I've gained that. I get to keep the $2,000 deposit. Plus my rents for the full 3 years have been significantly higher than what they were if I just did the conventional buy and hold. So I was happy either way. And as it turns out in this particular property, the tenant did not buy the property. They failed after about 2 years. So I was okay with that because the property cash flowed very nicely and it over and above what it would have conventionally for 2 years. So other idea, what if you have very little cash and or your credit is extremely bruised? You're able to find an investor willing to sell you his fourplex or any size of multiplex. You could do an actual purchase with a vendor take back, but you'll end up having some land transfer tax that you'll have to pay. And I'm assuming that you have no money at this point in time. So what if you do an option to purchase? Well, you manage the property. So what you do is you provide a very small down payment just to cover the cost to handle the deal. You collect and manage all the rents for a small fee. You agree that the profit portion of the income will go towards the purchase price in the future. You provide free labor. You purchase in the future when you can afford and qualify for that particular property then as well. Then if you fail to purchase and the owner keeps the down payment plus he enjoys that free labor as well. So it's sort of a win-win. It's a way for you to get into the game of investing, controlling a property. It's not costing you anything to do it. You're making a little bit of money. And while you're making money, you're also creating the down payment through the profit. And it's a win for the seller of the property because, again, it's now hands off. He has somebody, you, managing that property. And he knows that in the future, he's also got a buyer for that property, so he doesn't need to worry about real estate fees or negotiating a price. He's happy with that as well. If you don't buy it in the future, he's okay because he's had free property management and hassle-free care for his property for 3 years or whatever the term is. At that point in time, he can then deal with it through real estate conventionally. So some other rent-to-own opportunities. Obviously, there's the single-family homes. Underperforming properties like the duplex is a perfect example of one. You can also do it on multi-units, small or big. It doesn't matter what the size of the property is. You just have to keep in mind that if you're looking at a 12-unit apartment building, for example, you can't do 12 rent-to-own contracts, one for each unit. You can only do one contract for the title of the property. So be very clear on that. You're dealing with the owner to manage the entire property, to lease option the entire property, not the individual units. It's great if you have very little or too little cash to buy the property in the first place, or no credit, no job. It helps you get into the game and or alleviate some of your problems as well. It's also good for overvalued properties. You can agree to buy a property today at tomorrow's price because it's being overvalued, providing that the individual will allow you to do it through an option. So while you are managing the property, building up equity, some cash flow as well, you can then afford to pay a little bit more for the property in the future, which is what the seller is looking for as well. It's also not limited to land or properties. It can also be used for businesses. So you can take over a business. Actually, my daughter had a small business, and it was a food vending truck that she owned and operated for several years. And she wanted to get out of the business, and somebody who was interested in taking over the business actually took control of the trailer. It was a large food trailer, and paid her on a monthly basis a portion of the revenue that she collected, plus she collected a initial down payment. So it was sort of like a vendor financing, but the title did not transfer until she was able to afford the entire business, and at that point in time, then they had the sale take place. So once again, I just really want to stress that what I'm sharing with you here may or may not work in your jurisdiction. In 2010 in the U.S. market, after the big downturn and the financial crisis that we all experienced in 2007 to 2008, the fallout from that was the federal government created the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, which deals with the financing, and so anything to do with financing is going to have to be looked at very closely in the United States market. So that includes lease options, it includes vendor take-back financing, etc. There are some potential exemptions. So it's my understanding, but again, this is just my understanding. You need to do your own due diligence. There's my understanding that you can do up to 3 deals per year and be exempt of working with having to follow all these rules. Or if you're doing non-residential deals with respect to the lease options, then you will also be exempt. However, you must do your own research for this to truly understand what you can or can't do with respect to this law. And there are ways of working. There's always ways of working with new rules and regulations. But this is a perfect example of how new rules and regulations come up all the time. And we as the creative investors, we need to understand these rules, and then how do they impact us? How can we work with them to stay on the legal side of the law, but still be able to achieve our goals financially? So a few action assignments for you to take away from this is identify where you could have used options in the past. Also, identify where you could potentially use options now. And that could be with future development and land speculation, or it could also be you might have an underdeveloped or an underperforming property, for example, or you may have a property that's extremely difficult to sell. You may not have any cash today to be able to go out and purchase, but you want to get in on the game itself. Therefore, just identify these opportunities. If the lease options look to be of significant value to you, then I highly suggest that or recommend that you go out and take some courses specific to lease options, and also take the time to learn, research what the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act is for you and how it will affect you for investing in the United States market. All right, that's it for this lesson. Again, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at kbeaton@arcarealestate.ca. I will certainly answer all of your questions that you send my way during the live webinar. And so if you have questions, I highly recommend that you wait for the live webinar to see if your questions get answered. Email your questions in ahead of time so that I can answer them on the call. You can also ask them live during the call as well. And if you have joined the program after the recording of the live webinar and you've got questions, not to worry. I will be redoing all of the live webinar Q&A webinars periodically over the course of the year as more students join the program. Plus, your enrollment in this program entitles you to attend the monthly coaching call I have for all of my real estate programs. So that's the second Tuesday of every month. You can participate in that call, and you can ask any questions with respect to real estate. And of course, you can always email your question in. So thank you very much. That is the conclusion of module number 3, and I'll see you in module number 4.